How will the rookies taken in the 2024 NFL Draft reshape their teams? And how will they impact your fantasy teams? We're breaking down every team by their division. Today, we're talking about the AFC North. Who are the winners and the losers? We're talking depth charts, contracts, everything that helps you make an informed decision about this season and the future. Welcome to Shutout Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus. That's Kevin. And if you like this kind of stuff, please check out the other divisional videos as well and subscribe to the channel. We are so close to knowing what the hell we're talking about. Let's start with the Ravens. Winners, Keaton Mitchell and the existing linebackers, especially second-year man Trenton Simpson. Losers, Rasheed Bateman and Nelson Agholor. You are officially on notice. In the first round, the Ravens took Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson, and he is just completely solid all the way around. I love everything about him. He's also 20 years old, which is great for IDP formats and Dynasty. What I don't like, he needs to bulk up. Maybe invest in some kind of pasta or something. In fact, stop by my house. I live in Maryland. I'll teach you how to gain weight. It's food. The answer's food. It's a lot of it. Currently, his competition would be Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stephens, who are the starters. Humphrey is 27 years old. Brandon Stephens is only 26 years old. I don't know that he's going to be expected to be a starter year one, but sooner or later, he will be a starter here. He's not my favorite of all the cornerbacks, but he's definitely a solid one to choose, so yes, the answer is yes for IDP. Try and get him. Let's jump down to the fourth round where they actually grabbed another corner. TJ Tampa, cornerback out of Iowa State. He was another one that I was really fond of going into the draft. Did I just say fond of? I never speak like that. He's incredibly physical. Looks like he would punch a baby. His rookie year, he probably won't get much, but I think eventually he could also be a starter here. If you can get him in IDP, that's great, but at the very least, keep him on your radar because he's a potential starter for the Ravens, and that means something. In round 3, they got Adisa, edge out of Penn State. His athleticism score was 9th in the class. His RAS was just under 9. He had 14.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles last year. What I like is he has a high motor. He is relentless. Someone said he's got better hand skills than Chop Robinson. It might have been Daniel Jeremiah. I'm not sure anymore. The expectations are that he will eventually become a starter here. Right now, he's just on my watch list, though. In round 4, they grabbed Devontez Walker, wide receiver out of North Carolina. He's a big old drink of water at 6'2". Lightning fast, running a 4.36 40. Last year, he had 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. What I like about him is his athleticism, his profile, the draft capital. Because it's such a deep wide receiver class, you could make the case that a 4th rounder is kind of like a 3rd rounder any other year. He's got a huge catch radius for Lamar Jackson, and there's only like 2 pass catchers in front of him, or there will be. Probably his ceiling is the number 3 pass catching option in this offense. The offense goes through Mark Andrews, then Zay Flowers, and then at best, it's going to be Devontez Walker. It's going to be splashy and erratic fantasy play most likely, and there's not enough draft capital here either to imply that he might not get jumped or replaced next year. The competition on the roster for him is, like I said, Zay Flowers, then Rasheed Bateman, Nelson Agholor. Zay Flowers is only in his 2nd year of his rookie deal. Rasheed Bateman is 25 years old. He's got 2 more years after this year. Nelson Agholor is 30 years old. He's only on a 1-year deal, so he's likely done with the Ravens after this year. Currently, Devontez Walker is mocked about 47th overall, which is about the mid-third of a 12-team league. He's surrounded by running back Dylan Lobby and wide receiver for the Eagles, Ainias Smith. If I told you about a 5th-round running back from Marshall, you'd probably write him off. But let's take a look anyway. There's no metrics because he had a bicep injury, so he couldn't test. He did have 2 1,000-yard seasons in college, although I'm not sure if they were even back-to-back, and 39 touchdowns. It's hard to evaluate his tape because of the level of competition. He had 6 top 30 visits, including the Cowboys, who very clearly need a running back, and they did not pull the trigger on him. Currently on the Ravens, there's Derrick Henry, who's 30 years old and still has 2 years left on his deal, although there is an out after 1, but he's not going anywhere. Keaton Mitchell, who's 22 years old, and when he comes back, I expect to be heavily involved. Justice Hill, who just kind of hangs onto the roster. He's now 26 years old. He's on a 1-year deal. And then there's Rasheen Ali, who is replacing Gus Edwards' spot, but not exactly replacing Gus Edwards. They're not at all the same running back. And in fact, you could make a case that Justice Hill leaves next year and that Rasheed Ali is just another backup to replace Justice Hill. So after 2 years when Derrick Henry's gone, I think they're just going to draft another guy, and it'll be potentially Keaton Mitchell and that guy. He's currently mocked outside the top 50, likely in about the 4th round or so of a 12-team league. I'm not really into him, and I hope you enjoyed this great big circle that we took just to get back to the point that we're going to ignore him. In the 6th round, they took Devin Leary, quarterback out of Kentucky. I don't know how much I'm going to say about this particular quarterback other than he's not bad. And the competition behind Lamar Jackson is Josh Johnson, who's 37 years old, and Malik Cunningham, who was a UDFA that might also be a wide receiver or not on the team. So Devin Leary could be the backup quarterback going forward, and it still means nothing. Cleveland Browns. The Browns had a very perplexing draft, as they are just a perplexing franchise in general. If there's a winner here, I'm going to say it's Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver they drafted last year. The losers? Browns fans. The only draft pick I'm going to talk about from the Browns is Jamari Thrash, wide receiver, taken in the 5th round. He's out of Louisville. What I like from him is he's got some good tape, and he had a 1,000-yard season in college. What I didn't like was it was only 1,000-yard season, and it was 2 years ago. The depth chart is the real problem for Jamari Thrash. Wide receivers right now are Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, and then there's a hodgepodge of Jalen Darden, James Prochet, David Bell. Amari Cooper's 29 years old. He's got 3 years left on his deal, and the cap hit actually gets better after this year. Jerry Jeudy, who's only 25 years old, signed a 3-year deal with a ludicrous amount of dead cap money. Then there's Elijah Moore, who's 24. He's on the last year of his rookie deal. Cedric Tillman, who was just drafted last year, he's 24. He's got 3 years left on his rookie deal. If you're looking for where Jamari Thrash could fit into this depth chart, I don't think he does anywhere in his rookie year. But if he's going to replace anybody here, I think that the bullseye is on Elijah Moore. The issue I have with that is I think Elijah Moore is a much better wide receiver, and if he had a fantastic year this year, I think they'd just re-sign him. So I'm not in on Jamari Thrash, even though I liked some of his tape. I think he's just depth to get tossed onto the pile of Darden, Prochet, and Bell. I don't expect anything in his rookie year. I don't know that I expect him to be anything ever for the Browns. He's currently mocked outside the top 50, and I'm just going to pass. Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers had an annoyingly good draft. They started off with some linemen. I'm not going to talk about them, but I think that they got some really good people for their team. The winners here are Roman Wilson, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Jalen Warren, and Najee Harris. The losers are Calvin Austin III. So in the 3rd round, they took Roman Wilson, wide receiver out of Michigan, who ran 70% out of the slot in college. So the offensive line got better with their first 2 picks, which leads to a better run game, which will hopefully lead to a better pass game. And Roman Wilson is going to be a big part of that. The landing spot here means that he has the opportunity to be an immediate contributor. He's got blazing fast speed, good hands. The only thing I don't like is he's got a lot of hype. Even before the draft, he had a lot of hype, and not a ton of production, although I suppose that could be debated. Last year, he had 789 yards and 12 touchdowns, which isn't a ton, but it was also Michigan, and they didn't throw a ton. So maybe that's actually really good production considering. What I don't like about him is there's no yak, no breaking tackles. That's typically the kind of receiver I go for. I like guys who have a lot of yak or who get that extra couple yards. I don't see that a lot with Roman Wilson. It's mostly catch ball, fall down, catch ball, get tackled. The wide receiver room right now is George Pickens, Van Jefferson, and Calvin Austin III. George Pickens is 23 years old. He's going on the 3rd year of his rookie deal. He's the guy. There's not really much debate about that. Van Jefferson is 27 years old. He's on a 1-year deal, so potentially he's going after this year. But then there's Calvin Austin, who I feel like hasn't done a lot yet since he's been drafted, and maybe that's just quarterback dependent, but he's 25 years old. He's on the 3rd year of his rookie deal. And I kind of feel like if Roman Wilson is going to replace anyone, it's probably him, because he could become the slot guy tomorrow and have a decent year as a rookie. And I think if I'm looking beyond this year, I would say that he can remain the slot guy. I don't think they're going to replace him with any draft pick next year. It would be George Pickens, Roman Wilson in the slot, and then another guy newly drafted in the third role. So currently he's being mocked about the back of the second round right now, near other receivers like Troy Franklin or Jalen Polk. In the third round, they took Payton Wilson, linebacker out of NC State. He's 24 years old. He's got a bit of an injury history. That is most likely why he slid to the third round. Otherwise, some said he could have been a first-round talent, and I absolutely agree with that. He was my favorite going into the draft, although I was aware of his injury history. But if you're just looking at tape, I love Payton Wilson. Now, I don't love where he landed because of the depth chart. I mean, we've got TJ Watt, who, forget the fact that he's 29 years old. He's TJ Watt. Then there's Cole Holcomb, Patrick Queen, who they just signed to a 4-year deal, Alex Highsmith, who also just signed another 4-year deal. These guys, I mean, TJ Watt's 29, but Patrick Queen's 24, Alex Highsmith is 26, Cole Holcomb's 27. He's got 2 years left on his deal and could be cut whenever, but I don't know that Payton Wilson's coming in and taking his lunch anytime soon. There's not just injury concerns, there's debate about Wilson needing to develop a little more, so I think those four are solid for now, and Payton Wilson's just kind of hang out kind of as depth for now. I'm interested, but only at a super low cost. If I can snag him super late, I might get him for IDP, but there's also the very real danger that Payton Wilson might just be a roster clogger for about a year or two even. Cincinnati Bengals. The winners here are Joe Burrow, rookie Erick and all running backs because they didn't get replaced, and the first pick was an offensive lineman. The losers are wide receivers Charlie Jones and Andre Iosavash. In the third round, they took Jermaine Burton, wide receiver out of Alabama. He's never topped 1,000 yards, but collectively, between Georgia and Alabama, in his college career, he's had over 2,300 yards and 23 touchdowns. So that's pretty good production, actually. What I like is everyone agrees he's a very good player. His athleticism is unquestioned, he's attached to Joe Burrow, and he's got a path to playing time, because there's no more Tyler Boyd there. The problem is, apparently there's some off-the-field character concerns. He might be a secret asshole. He supposedly struck a female fan from an opposing team, and I try not to attach myself to assholes. I mean, 1 minute they're dancing in the end zone, and the next they're making toilet wine because they were street racing. Can't have that. The wide receiver room is Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who maybe is leaving or maybe not. Tyler Boyd, like I said, is gone. And then there's a hodgepodge of Trent Irwin, Charlie Jones, and Andre Iosavash. Two of those who were rookies from last year, but I don't think really have a role here. The expectations in his rookie year are something. I think Jermaine Burton's going to get involved. At the very least, he slides right into where Tyler Boyd was. So he's going to have some fantasy value this year. The thing that's contested is if T. Higgins leaves, will he slide into the number 2 spot and then get a little boost? Maybe. He's got the athleticism to do so, but I don't really know for sure that that's going to happen. And that would be my concern going forward is does somebody else just get drafted next year and he stays the number 3? I'm not as interested in getting the number 3, especially at the price he's at right now, because I think everybody's kind of hip to Jermaine Burton for the most part. Jermaine Burton is currently mocked about the back of the second round, pretty close to Roman Wilson. In the fourth round, the Bengals took Erick, tight end out of Iowa. He didn't test because he was injured last October, so there were no metrics. But he looks very athletic on tape. He had 4 years at Michigan, and I guess he wasn't getting a whole lot of work because, as we've already established, they didn't throw a ton. So he left and went to Iowa, and then got injured. So that didn't work out. The depth chart here is actually something that I like, because he's not going to be forced to play as a rookie. We got Mike Gesicki, Tanner Hudson, and Drew Sample. And those guys are 28 years old, 29 years old, and 28 years old. So it's pretty clear that the Bengals were looking to infuse some youth at the position. Hopefully I can get him a little cheaper, a little later. I'm expecting absolutely nothing in his rookie year. Just fold him up like a nice comfy blanket, and then next year, you've got the starting tight end for Joe Burrow. And that sounds pretty valuable to me. Currently, he's being mocked at about the back of the third, early fourth round of a 12-team league, near other tight ends like Jatavian Sanders and Theo Johnson. In the sixth round, the Bengals took another tight end, Tanner McLaughlin out of Arizona. His metrics were more impressive than his film. He's got 2 years of modest production in college. What I don't like is he's 25 years old. I mean, this guy was buying beer while Anthony Richardson was still in high school. There's no expectations for him in fantasy. He's just an interesting watch. What's that? He's Canadian? What is that? Who cares? Do they age differently? Are they like dogs? Like I said, we're breaking down every team by their division, so please go check out the other videos as they drop as well. Also, if this is your first time at the channel, please consider subscribing. Nobody else does. Why don't you be different? Thanks for watching Shut Up Football. We'll catch you next time. Peace!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boy.